this is your first time joining and you are wondering how to start, the projects in your account is the starting point. Once you sign up, you'll see all the projects in your account. Start with each project. Once you have completed a project, then there is a corresponding assignment to that project. To find the corresponding assignment to the project in the Slack channel, in the AWS DevOps channel, if you click on this icon up here, it would open the important links. And under these important links, you'll find all the assignments, the links to join Zoom, the links to view the videos for the past recording we have done. So all the important links that you will need to join anything we are doing, you'll find it under this important links section in the AWS DevOps channel. And if there's any link in there that I don't have, that I should have, let me know, and I will add that link there as well. And just a reminder too, I said that, and this is for those that are new, if there's anyone here, I always like to just go through this point in the beginning. Once you finish a project in your account, for example, the project one, once you finish it and you start the assignment for that project, how we are tracking progress is we use the Jira board. So in the important links, you'll find the information to access Jira. And once you access the Jira board is here. I will also leave a link in the important links on how to create ticket on the Jira board. So that way I don't have to keep creating ticket every week. But once you come to this space in the Jira board, all you have to do is click create here. And under summary, you enter your name. So that way, when I'm looking at the ticket, I know who's creating the ticket. And if you are already in a group, enter your group name. But if you are not in a group, just enter your name and the description for the assignment you are working on. So let's say you are working on the dynamic project, you enter your name, assignment for dynamic web app. So once you enter that, you can enter a brief description of the project in here, clear whatever you see in here and enter your description. Once you've done that, the important thing to note here is under sprint, we are on sprint 7. Make sure you select the sprint. If you create your ticket without selecting the sprint, it is going to show up in the backlog. I'll show you next. If you don't select sprint here when you are creating the ticket, your ticket will show up in the backlog and you are not going to see it on the board. So if you want to see your ticket on the board immediately, make sure you select your sprint here. Don't forget to do that. And that's all you need to do here and click create. And for those of you that have created tickets in the past and you forgot to select the sprint, your tickets will be in the backlog. So if I go in the backlog here, and this is the current sprint, you'll see up here, sprint 7. If you scroll down, the backlog is here and you can see all the tickets here. These are the tickets you guys have created that you forgot to select the sprint. So they show up in the backlog. I believe most of you just went back and create another one. So if you create a ticket, you can find it. All you have to do is come to the backlog. If you see it there, just take that ticket and drag it to the current sprint we are working on here. When you drag it there, it is going to ask you this question. Just click confirm to add it. I'm not going to add this because I'm not sure whether Tina has created another ticket. So that is how to access the Jira board. And the reason why we are doing it is just so you get familiar with it, because like I said, at work, you will be responsible for creating your own ticket, updating your ticket and moving your tickets to the right column. Once you add your ticket to the Jira board and you start working on your assignment, the first time you add your ticket, it will be in to do. That just means that is the assignment that you are going to complete. Once you start working on it, all you have to do is click and drag it and move it to in progress. And once you have completed the assignment and you have met all the acceptance criteria, add your comment, click on the ticket. And here under comment, you will add all your comments for whatever I am requiring to review your work. So once you add your comment, you are going to move it to in review. And at this point, this is where I will review it. And if everything is met, I'm going to move it to done. So this is how we move our tags from one section to another section. So you are responsible for creating it, moving it to in progress, providing all the acceptance criteria in the comment section and moving it to review. What I started doing is, because all of you guys are completing your assignment and I want to make sure I'm holding everyone accountable, what I started doing is moving everyone's ticket to done once I review it and also updating your Excel sheet. So that way it's just for me to keep track of what you guys are doing. So, but at work, you'll be responsible. Once your ticket is reviewed, you'll be responsible for moving it to done. So that is the Jira board. The only other thing we are doing is, if you don't have access to this Excel sheet, let me know. I'm going to add you. And the only other thing we are doing is for each assignment we have completed, we are also tracking it here. So that way I am holding everyone accountable to following the roadmap we have created for ourselves. So this is the roadmap we have created for ourselves, which we said that to be a cloud engineer and to build the necessary skills to feel confident to go out there and start applying for work, we must build our skills in this area. So right now we are in phase 2. We are building our skills here. Once we are done, we are going to move to phase 3 so that anyone don't skip any of this step. That is why we have the Excel sheet. So the Excel sheet is a way for me to confirm that you have completed each assignment in each phase and you are moving along the way you are supposed to. So if you look here now, you'll see that there's no one that has an assignment completed on 5 when they have not completed assignment 1. So this is just a way to also hold you accountable. Once you get access to this sheet, all you have to do is enter your name here. If you don't have a group does not matter at this point. It won't stop you from completing the assignment. Continue to work on the assignment. Anyone you see on this board that has completed any assignment you are working on, please feel free to reach out to them. I'm sure they will be more than happy to help you. And I also want you guys to think about it in the line of work. When you start work, you are coming into an environment that most of the stuff will be done. And they will send all the information to you at once. This is what our reference architecture looks like. This is what our environment looks like. Your company may also have 200-300 people. Maybe on your team, there's probably 20 people. You would also have to reach out to them, introduce yourself, and ask them any questions you have. So everything we are doing here is to mimic what your day-to-day is like. Don't hesitate to reach out to anyone in this program that you see their name here, that you can ask questions. If they don't respond, obviously, I'm always the first line to send your questions to, but I also want you guys to get in a habit of helping each other out, which I noticed that a lot of you guys have been doing. So thank you for that. That is how to access the Excel sheet. Does anyone have any questions on the things that I've mentioned? Okay, let's move on to today's demo, which is the assignment 5. And I have uploaded the instruction on the canvas where you will find it under the important links. For assignment 5, it is a continuation of the previous project you guys completed in assignment 4. So the same application we deployed using an EC2 instance. Now we are going to deploy that application using Docker and Amazon ECS Fargate. This is the reference architecture you are going to use to complete the project. And it is also the same reference architecture you completed in assignment 3, where you are supposed to design a reference architecture. So the instruction is pretty much similar to assignment 4. We are using the same application code. We are using the same SQL script. So nothing is different. We are following the same framework, which is a LAMP stack. The only other thing that I noticed about this application is Bello was working on it and we were troubleshooting. And I noticed too, when I was working on this assignment, is that the application code is too large to upload into a GitHub repository at once. GitHub has a limit to how big a file can be when you are uploading it into your repository, because they prefer that you work on your code piece by piece and push them to your repository as you go. If you have a large file in your repository, that's fine, but those code, you have to be pushing them in there as you update them, as opposed to writing all your codes, then trying to upload them into your GitHub repository. That's the issue we are running into with this project, is that the application code is too big to upload into the GitHub repository. There's a way around that where GitHub has an option to upload a large file into your repository. When I uploaded my zip folder into the GitHub repository, Bello also did the same thing. It is corrupting the zip file. And when we start building our Docker image and we try to unzip the zip file, we are getting an error because for some reason it is corrupting the zip file. So the idea I have to solve this issue is, which is why I'm always saying, when you guys are working in the cloud space, one of your main job as a cloud engineer is to solve problems. So always think about, even when you are deploying an application, you are solving a problem. And if you come across any issue while you are deploying an application, think of, okay, what are the ways I can solve this problem? So what I did to solve this issue is, first, we can use S3 again as a means to store our application code. But in this project, I didn't want to use S3. I want you guys to use GitHub just to get familiar with having your application code in GitHub, because most likely that's where your company will have the application code. Clone it to your server and do whatever you want to do with it from there. So in this project, we'll be storing our application code in GitHub. And two ways you can solve the problems of your file being too big is you can create your repository. Once you create your repository, you have to unzip the application code that I gave you. So for example, let's say this is the application code and I have unzipped it. You will see all the application code like this once you unzip it, right? When you create your repository, you have to clone your repository to your computer. Then when you clone it to your computer, whatever directory you clone it to, you have to select 2 folders at a time. This is what I did to upload it to my GitHub repository. I selected 2 folders at a time and I right-click, I cut. Once I cut, then I'll go to my repository that I cloned and I paste there. Once I paste it, then I'll push that changes to my GitHub repository and I'll just repeat the same process until I have copied all the files and folders from here into my GitHub repository and paste it. Remember, the key thing is do 2 folders at a time. Once you cut it and you paste it in your repository, push it, then repeat that same process. Because in these folders, there are some folders in here that has large file. Another thing I want to mention is if you choose to go with this process under this vendor, you can see there's tons of folders in here and each of these folders has lots of files. You can't upload this vendor folder into your GitHub repository at once. So what you would do is in the repository you cloned on your computer, create a folder called vendor. It will be an empty folder. Then come in this vendor, start doing the same thing, cut, select maybe 3 folders, cut it, paste it in the other vendor folder, push it. Then you will repeat that process until you have cut everything out of this vendor folder and add it to the other vendor folder that you are trying to push to your repository. And that was the process I used to upload all the application code into this GitHub repository. And I've also tested it to make sure that it works. When you are working with this process though, please pay attention to it because it is easy for you to copy an application code and paste it in the wrong directory. Make sure that if you are using that process that I just mentioned, that you are copying the application code and they show up exactly how they should show up. So what you can probably do is before you start copying it, you can take a screenshot of what it looks like. And after you have copied everything into your local repository and push it, they should still show up the same way. That is the first option. And that option is a little bit tedious, but it works. The second option is since I have uploaded the application code into my repository, I am going to give you access to this repository so that you can fork this repository and you can also clone it and be able to work with this repository. So that is probably the easiest option. And you guys notice that I've been asking you for your GitHub username if you want access to this repository. Once you provide me with your username, I'm going to send you an invite. Accept the invitation and instantly you will have access to this repository. You guys know if you click on this icon, you'll see all your repositories here. It will show up in your account the same way. It will show up here and all you have to do is look for it. And the name of the repository is Nest App Code. So this is the name of the repository. You can see Bello already accepted the information and the repository is also showing up under his account. So once the repository is showing up, you can follow the same process of how you clone your repository, which you can clone your repository with this information. So this is the easiest way to work with the application code for now. So moving on to the assignment, that is why I have that information here. Remember, the application code is the same one as assignment 4, but if you want access to the repository that I've uploaded the code, send me your username and I'll send you the invite. So that is what I have here. And the SQL script is the same. The application framework is a LAMP stack, meaning that we are using a Linux server and the softwares we are going to install on it are Apache, MySQL, and PHP. That is what LAMP means. And the hardware we will use in this project is use the Amazon Linux 2 base image. I know I said use the Amazon Linux 2023 last week, but don't use that. Use the use the Amazon Linux 2 base image. Because the Linux 2023, I'm still finding it hard to install some packages on it, because since it is new, I'm not too sure about all the support it has for the different packages we need to install on it. And we've tested the Amazon Linux 2 in the project in our account, and we know it works and it has good support to install any package you want to install on it. So for this project, we don't have to use the 2023. Let's use the Amazon Linux 2 base image. So in your Docker file, this is the base image you are going to use here. Then, similar to assignment 4, the first thing you are going to do is install all the softwares that are required for your application to run. Remember, we said that we are using a LAMP stack, and LAMP stands for Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. So that means that in order for our application to run, we have to install Apache on our container. We have to install PHP. The PHP version we are using is version 8, and we have to install PHP extensions. These are the PHP extensions that we need for our application to function. We also need to install MySQL version 8, and we also need to install CURL and PHP core. I don't know if it's called CURL or core. So we need to install this, and we need to set these settings on our server, memory limit, and max execution time to these numbers. Once we've done that, we need to also enable mode rewrite. Pretty much everything we did when we hosted this application on an EC2 instance is the same exact thing we are doing when we are hosting this application on a Docker container, which is what I'm always telling you guys to always think about the concept, which is also why I am forcing you guys to start from the basics and build your knowledge as you go. You guys are saying that the concept of how you deploy this application on the previous project when we are deploying it on an EC2 instance has not changed. You are doing the same exact thing on a Docker container. The only thing we have to do now is figure out a way to put our script in a way that Docker understands. As far as for like the things you are doing, is the same exact thing. So once we've done that, we have to also install the necessary things and configuration for us to be able to access our application. The first part, how we broke it down, is the first part is the softwares you must install on your server for your application to run. The second part is installing your application itself and configuring your application so you can start accessing it. So the first thing you have to do is remember, once you create your RDS instance, you need to migrate your data into the RDS database. That is the first step. And we are using Flyway to migrate our data. Then once you've done that, you need to copy the application code from your GitHub repository, which is the GitHub repository I'm showing you if you choose to use that. Copy the application code from there into your HTML directory. Remember, for a LAMP stack, in order for you to be able to see your application, all your application code must show up in your HTML directory in this order. So these are all the application code. And what we are saying is, when we look in your HTML directory, your application code must show up there in this order. So what we are trying to solve is, how do we copy all the application code that the developer has given us into our HTML directory? So that's one of the problems we are trying to solve, and we are using GitHub to solve that problem, or S3. In this project, we are using GitHub, meaning that we upload our application code from our computer into GitHub, and on our server, we can run a command to download it from GitHub. So once you've done that, you need to set the permission. This is the same thing we did in the last project. And once you've done that, we are going to update our .env file to add our application URL and database credentials. The last thing we need to do is replace our app service provider.php file. This is the same as what we did in the last lecture. You guys know in the last lecture, you guys use VI to edit the app service provider.php file. But when we are building our Docker file, there wouldn't be a way for you to use VI to edit it. And I don't know the command to replace that piece of code in the file itself. So what I'm doing is I'm just replacing the entire file. I'll show you that shortly. Someone was asking me, do we have to use GitHub? For this project, I want you to use GitHub because in the previous project, we used S3 just to expose you to a wide range of service and to challenge what you know so you don't follow the same process all the time. That's why we are using GitHub. Yes, I could have used S3 too, but since we already used S3 when we deployed it on an EC2 instance, for this Docker project, I want you to use GitHub. In my Docker file, what I did is I replaced the file instead of manipulating it. And for this assignment, the acceptance criteria would be you have to provide a copy of your Docker file. Then you provide the URL of your site fully deployed. Once you send the URL to me, if I'm online, I'm going to review it immediately. If not, you can continue to the next assignment and delete your resources. But before you delete your resources, make sure you also provide the screenshot of your site that is fully deployed, showing that your website is encrypted, similar to what you guys have done in the previous project. You have to also provide a screenshot of your ECS service, showing that your tags are healthy. Then make sure your Docker file is stored in your GitHub repository, and you clone the repository to your computer to build your image and push your image to your ECR repository, similar to what we did in the Docker project that you are completing in your account. And the last thing is make sure you don't hard code your RDS, username, password, anything that is considered secret. Make sure you don't hard code them on your Docker file. For this project, I also want you to use build arguments and environment variable. You can either do it how we did it in the project in your account, or if you have any other methods of passing secrets to your Docker container when it runs, do that, other than hard coding your secrets on your Docker file. So this is the instruction for that assignment. And I'm just going to briefly show you my Docker file, because I told you guys that I completed this project to test it, make sure everything is working. And so this is my Docker file. And similar to the same concept we've been following for the EC2 instance. When we create our Docker file, we just create a file called Docker file. Then we pick our base image, we use from, we pick our base image. The requirement is saying you should use Amazon Linux too. So that's what you are saying here. Then we said after that, we need to install all the necessary softwares that our application needs to function. So here we are using yum update -y. And if you guys compare the commands we are running here, to run a command on Docker, we use run, all capital run, and we specify the command we want to run. What I am saying is, if you compare this command to the same command we ran on the EC2 instance, you will see that it is the same thing. So nothing has really changed. Now we are just trying to put our script that we use when we deploy this application on an EC2 instance. We are trying to put the script in a format that Docker understands. And how Docker understands it is we are going to use the word run, and we are going to specify the command we want to run. So here we have run. First, we are going to update all the packages on our server. So that's what this yum update -y means. You guys already know that, because at this point, the way you guys are completing your assignment, I'm very confident in you guys' ability. And one thing I'm mostly proud of is one of the questions I used to get a lot is, how do you come up with the script? So I'm very excited to see that you guys are actually writing your own script as opposed to me giving you the script. So here I'm just going to glance you through everything, but I'm not going to provide the script for the Docker file to you. You have to create it yourself. I know I'm showing you here, but I still kind of want to point you in the right direction to think, but maybe I won't show you everything. So here we have the command to install our server, which is run update -y. Then once we install our server, one thing I also want to mention is Docker is very lightweight compared to an EC2 instance. When we use an EC2 instance, there is more packages that comes pre-installed on the EC2 instance. Things like unzip and wget is already installed on an EC2 instance. That is why when we worked on it in our EC2 project, we didn't have to install those packages. But on Docker, unzip does not come with it. Wget does not come with it. That is why before we start running our command, because we know we are going to need these two packages, that is why we install it. We install unzip and we install wget package. Once we've done that, we are now installing everything we need to meet our server requirement. So first here, it says we need to install Apache. See, we are installing Apache here. Then it says we need to install PHP version 8 and these PHP extensions. We are doing that here. Then the next requirement is we need to install MySQL version 8 here. We are doing that here. The next thing is we need to install UC core, or I'll just call it core, and PHP core. We are doing that here. Then the next thing we need to do is set these settings on our server. We are doing that here. And all I did is, this is the Linux command that would install these things on an Amazon Linux 2 base image. All I'm doing is just adding the Docker, execute this Docker command on it, which is run. And once you specify run, you just add the command you want to run. That's all I did. Similarly, if you copy any of this and you run it on an Amazon Linux 2 instance, it should work. So we are not doing anything. We are just taking that same command and adding run before it, because that is how Docker wants it. Then the last thing we need to do here is enable mode rewrite. That is the command to do it here. So the first thing you have to do at this point is make sure you have migrate your data into the RDS database. Then once we've done that, we need to copy our application code into the HTML directory. And before we do that here, I'm using this Docker command so this is, I'm trying to figure out what these things are called in Docker, like the run, work directory. I'm trying to figure out what names they are called, but I'm not going to say the wrong thing. But in Docker, you can see, even if you hover over it here, it is telling you what it is doing. So you guys know how we change our directory into HTML directory. In this Docker file, I'm trying to change my directory into the HTML directory, but instead of using CD, you can just use this work dir, and that will set your working directory into the HTML directory. This just means that for the subsequent thing we are about to do, we want to do them in the HTML directory. So it's kind of equivalent to changing your directory to the HTML directory. So once we've done that, we have to install Git, because Git does not come on the container, so we have to install it. Once we install Git, we are going to clone our repository. So the repository I'm cloning here is the same repository I'm giving you guys access to. So this is the command to clone the repository. Remember, it is a private repository, and to clone it, you have to create a personal access token, and you specify the personal access token in your HTTPS link. That is going to be what will allow you to clone the repository. We did that in the project in your account, so you can look at the example there. And once we've done that, now, one thing I want to mention is when you clone the repository that I'm giving you access to, what I am saying is that the repository will show up like this. So when you clone it, it won't be a zip file anymore. It will just be an open directory. And in that directory, all the application codes will be in there. So don't get confused about all app codes that I said here. I'm just saying that when you clone the repository, there will be a directory. And in that directory, all the application code, by all the application code, I mean all this application code will be in that directory. So that is how it would clone it on your server. So there wouldn't be a zip file. So since there is no zip file, and when we clone it, it clones the exact directory with the application code in it. So the next thing I did is I just ran my command to copy all the application code out of the next app code directory into the HTML directory. Then once I did that, I removed that repository that I cloned because I don't need it anymore since I've copied all my application code into the HTML directory. Then from there, we continue with setting the permissions on our server, which is this requirement. Then we update our .env file. So here we need to update our .env file. You can see I did that here. In this example, I have hard code everything to show you, but when you work on it, so what I'm saying is first, Docker instructions. Thank you. So thank you. So when I was talking about these things, they are called Docker instructions. So I said part of the acceptance criteria is you are not going to add code your values here. So I'm showing you this because what I always do is first I test first. So I hard code everything in my Docker file. I'm not going to commit this to my repository and I'll test it to make sure it works. If it works, then I'll come back and change all this to environment variables and use build arguments to build my Docker image. So the first thing I did was test it first here. So if you guys want to test your Docker file first before you use build arguments to build it, test it first, push it to your ECR repository, deploy your ECS app, check whether you can access your application. If you can access it, then go back to build your Docker file using the build arguments and environment variables, then push it to your ECR repository. It will still be the same URI for the image. Then redeploy your ECS service and see if you can still access your application after you've used your build arguments. So here, for this requirement, that's what you are seeing here. Then once I've done that, here, I'm just replacing my app service provider.php file. So what I did is in the same directory that my Docker file is in. My Docker file is in this directory. This directory is called the root directory. In the same directory that my Docker file is in, I've uploaded the app service provider.php file that we are supposed to have at the end. So this is what the app service provider.php file should look like. And if you look in it, the part of this file that we are trying to update has already been updated on this file. So what I did is I've also provided this file to you guys. It is in the same place you would download the assignment instructions from. So once you download it, add it to your root directory where you will be building your Docker image from. So when you run this command, it is just going to replace the file for you. I found this to be very easy. Then once you've done that, we are going to expose the port and start the service. So this is what I used to build the Docker file. Once I build the Docker file, right, another thing you guys know from working on the projects in your account is that to build my Docker image, I created the script to do that. So feel free to create your script too, right? The same script that you can just run every time to build your Docker image. And I created this script because in the terminal, you can type Docker build and build your Docker image. You guys know that. But since we have to enter all these values for the build arguments, I'd rather just use a script to do it instead of typing this every single time. So that's why we are using a script. Similarly, once you have built your Docker image and you need to push your Docker image to the ECR repository, you can also create another script for it. So this is the script I created for that. You guys know once you build your image, right? First, you have to create the ECR repository. This is the AWS CLI command to create the ECR repository. Once I've created the ECR repository, then I need to retag my Docker image to that repository. This is the command to do that. Then once I've done that, I need to log in into the ECR repository. This is the command. Let me show you the full command so you can see. Then once I've done that, then I run Docker push to push my image to that repository. Every single time you guys build an image, retag the image and push it, you'll be running this. So instead of always typing it, I just add all the commands into a script. So when I need to push my image after I've built it, I'm just going to run this script and that is going to run everything for me. So that is what I did here for this script. So it makes it easier. For example, if I go in here and show you guys, for example, if I open this, instead of me, and I'm going to build my image. So you see here, I'm running the script build image.ps1, which is this. If I run that to build it, it is going to build my image. There's nothing to build because I've already built it. So that is fine. So once you are done building your image, now I need to push my image to the ECR repository. I'm just going to run the other script, push image.ps1. So if I run that, you can see it ran it and pushed my image. My image is already pushed to the ECR repository. There's nothing to change here. And that is the shortcut I'm using to make my work more efficient. So that is what I want to explain for this project for assignment 5. For those of you that are on assignment 5 to complete it. That would be it for today's demo. So I know Titus has a question. Please go ahead with your question.
Oh, sorry. So I wanted to ask, using VS Code, when you always say, you have a folder, you want to create a file. When you say you create, you click, if you want to create a file that is tied to the root directory, if you click in the open space, is it the same like just being able to just click on that directory and create the file directly from there?
It depends on what you are selecting at the time. So let me show you. So I'm just going to create a folder here, call it test. All right. When you guys are clicking in here, and this is also a common mistake. Well, I won't call it mistake, but I just something to realize. When you guys are working in VS Code, you guys know whatever you see here, that is the folder you are working in. That is your root directory at that point, whatever folder you have opened in Visual Studio Code. In my directory now, I have this test folder. Let's say this test folder is selected and I right click and I say, it doesn't even matter wherever I right click. So see, I've selected this test folder. Even if I right click down here and I say new file and I just create my file, it is going to create my file. Well, it created my file in this directory. But what happens sometimes is when you guys are creating file, if you select here and you say new file, this is what people do sometimes, it will create your file in there. So when I'm creating a file, what I do is, if I'm trying to create my file in my root directory, I will just make sure I'm clicking somewhere here first. I'll click down here to make sure I'm not selecting anything. Then once you click down here, you see this blue thing around it. Then if you right click here and select new file and give the file a name, it will create that file in your root directory as opposed to in that folder. Is that the question you are asking? Like knowing where to create the file?
Yeah, it's the question, but let me rephrase it the other way. So now if we click on that next app Docker directory and create a file, it's still the same, like just click.
Yes, it's the same. Yeah.
All right.
So if you click, yes, you can do that too. But I don't like doing this because every time you do it, it always minimizes it. So, but if you click here, right, and you can either click new file here, or you can right click. Well, if you click here, let me see, because I don't usually do it this way. If you click here and you right click down here, and let's do new file. Yeah, it is creating it in that next tab. But to make it easy, just click anywhere in this open space. If you are trying to create it in your root directory, click anywhere in this open space and right click and select new file. That is what I always do. And every single time it will create it in that directory. If you want to create it in a folder in your directory, then you can select the folder first, right click on that folder and select new file. Then whatever you are creating will be in that folder. So the method you've said works too, but I don't like selecting this because you see every time I click it, it is always doing that.
Thank you.
No problem. Henry, go ahead.
Yeah, Aziz, thank you so much for this. Sorry if I have to take you back. I was listening to your GitHub instruction. I just want to make sure I understand very well. So after you have invited me, I accepted the invite. So I have to like clone it to my local machine, right? So after cloning it, then I open a folder, right? And I unzip it. So if I unzip it, so what you say is I have to go back to the GitHub and create another repo, then copy it, just like you said, right?
Oh, no. What I'm saying is that let me log into my other GitHub account. So this is the account that I have the code in. I'm going to log out. And I've also tested it. So I'm going to log into my other GitHub account that I granted access to. So this will be similar to you guys' account. So imagine I was you now. I've accepted the invite.
Okay.
What I'm saying is under your repository,
Okay.
the repository will show up there just like any other repository you have. So if you can find it, it is called next app code. So just type next -app -code. Once you type it, you'll see it's showing up here.
Okay.
Right. So once you select it, what I'm saying is it is a private repository. You can work with this repository now, just like you work with any other repository you created in your account.
Okay.
In this repository, I didn't upload the zip file. I actually uploaded all the application code.
Okay.
So which is why I said in your Docker file, all you have to, the part I was saying about cloning it, I'm saying like if you want to work with this repository, you can clone it to your computer the same way you clone any other repository that you created in your account. That's what but you guys don't need to clone this repository because there is nothing you are changing here. So
just this one straight.
Exactly. It's just the application code. I just want you to have access to it. So if you choose to download the application code from here, you can do that. There's nothing to clone on your computer to work with this repository because this is just the application code. But what I'm saying is once you have access to it on your Docker file, you just run your command to clone it. You see here, I'm running Docker git clone. Then you specify your personal access token. And what I don't know is you guys can test it and let me know. Whether here you have to specify your GitHub username or mine, I don't know. So you guys test it and let me know.
Our GitHub.
Your GitHub, okay. So here you have to specify your GitHub and the name of the repository here. So it's pretty much the same thing you are doing. I'm just giving you access to the code. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
No problem. So yeah, we don't have a zip folder this time around. Right. Benga, please go ahead. Titus, did you say you have another question or is that a hold comment? There's probably a note comment. Sorry. All right, yeah, go ahead, Benga.
Thank you, Aziz. When I try to push my code to GitHub, I created a repository, then I unzip my own folder too. Then I copied the folder that I unzip into the directory where I have my repository, and I call it testing. So when I try to push all the unzip folder into GitHub, I realized that the name is no longer next app again because the next app is not showing. So, and anytime I try to use that folder, it will say it couldn't recognize that folder. I don't know if it's the same thing with you as well.
So did you unzip the original code that I gave you, or are you talking about this one from this?
The the original code, I unzip it on my local computer. Then
Yes.
the unzip one, then I copy the whole thing into my GitHub repository, but the name changed. It's no longer Next App anymore. It doesn't even have a name. It just have my repository name. That's all.
I have to look at it to see what you are doing. So everyone's computer is different. I'm not sure how your computer is unzipping it. Maybe you is unzipping it, and yeah, I have to see exactly what you are doing. But remember, the issue we are facing with this project is if you take this, you create a repository and you clone it to your computer, and you take the application code that I gave you for this project and unzip it and try to push it, it is not going to work because the application code is too big. The file size for the application code is too large for what GitHub allows you to be able to push into your repository at a time.
I was able to push into my repository when I unzip it on my computer. Everything is on my repository now. It's just that the name changed.
Are you sure you pushed everything directly?
Yeah, the command I used was I just used git status. Then I take git add dot, and then added it everything. Then I'm able to push it to my repository.
Yeah, I'm positive you are not pushing all of it, but I can help you look at it once class is done.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, because if you try to push all the application code that I gave you, Bello tried it, I tried it, and I've tried it several times. It will give you an error because the file is too large. So if you're able to push all of yours, and it shouldn't be renaming anything. So, but I have to look at it and see what you did. Okay, Bello, go ahead. You want to ask about the max execution time? You didn't see it on my Docker file. It is on my Docker file. So it is the same command you guys. Yes, like Titus said, GitHub allows you to push up to 100 megabytes of data into your GitHub repository, and our application code is definitely more than 100 megabytes. So that's the issue. Yeah, Bello, that command is on my Docker file. So it is here. This is my Docker file. Let me close this. It is here. Does anyone else have any question?
Yes, I do, Aziz. I've got a couple of questions. This is my first time.
Okay, go ahead.
So I was trying to deploy the e-commerce website. I think it's the dynamic one. And then whenever I try to clone it from the S3, sorry, there's a bit of noise here, but it keeps saying that my credentials cannot be found, although I've reconfigured it using AWS config with all my credentials from AWS. So the access key and the secret access key. So I was just wondering what could be causing that. And my second question, yeah.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear your first question because you went in and out. So you said you were trying to, which part were you trying to, can you repeat that again, please? I got the last part, but the first part of it, you were trying to copy something.
Yes, so once I've created my VPC and all its components, and I try to clone the image from my S3. Anytime I run AWS, anytime I run AWS S3 sync S3 and the web files, it says my credentials cannot be found.
Okay, so make sure.
Yeah.
I think I understand now. Sorry, the stuff is going in and out on my end, so that's why it seems like I'm talking over it. Sorry, but I think I understand what you are trying to copy your application code from your S3 into your server and run it, right? So make sure when you launch your EC2 instance, first make sure you create an IAM role that has S3 permission, right? Then once you've done that, the video is there. When you are launching your EC2 instance, what you are forgetting to do is you need to give your EC2 instance that IAM role. So under the user data section, not the user data, under the advanced section, you will see an option to pick that IAM role you create. Once you add that IAM role to your EC2 instance, it will allow you to download it.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's what you are missing. Yes. Okay. So what was your second question?
My second one is I'm on the Docker project now. So my service, once I create service, it doesn't seem to get healthy. So anytime I do it, it says it's not healthy and then it just stops. When I go to the formation to check, it just dies. So that I've not been able to progress.
So on your ECS service, if your service is unhealthy, there could be several things that's causing it. So anytime you guys deploy an ECS service and it's showing up unhealthy, this is what I want you guys to do. Come to the ECS console, select cluster, then whatever cluster you create the service in, select it. Once you select your cluster, right? Then this is the service section in that cluster. Select that service that you deployed. How you will know the reason why your service is failing is you have to come to either deployment and events. So if you come to deployment, you will pretty much see all the event information. So this deployment and event is the same thing. If you select event or deployment, it will bring you to the events too. Here,
Okay.
you will see all the information about when the task was created. If you, for example, this task was created, right? Let me find one that I created that failed. I don't think there's anyone that failed in this one. So here you will find the information on the task. If you select the task that's failing, right on this page, it will tell you why it is failing. There will be like an error, something. There will be like a message here that's telling you. Sometimes it will show up in the logs. So that's how you will know exactly what is making it fail. But without that, there's no way to know. I can't tell you why your service is failing without looking at your event logs.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then and the last, how do we get your link so that we can add it to the GitHub repository?
Oh, sir, what was your last question?
Being added to your GitHub, or being how do you get the invitation on your GitHub? Do I just text you?
For this assignment that I'm just talking about?
Yes, and everything, because I'm new to this, so I don't have it.
Okay. Yeah. So okay. Let me explain to you. So welcome to the program again. I appreciate you being here, and please continue to work on the assignment. So how it works is the projects in your account, those are the projects you need to complete, right? So what we are doing here is just additional thing I'm trying to do to reinforce some of the things you are learning. So when you complete a assignment in your account, what I want you to do is, well, before you used to reach out to me. So the starting point is you will start with a project in your account. Let's say you start with the project 1. When you complete that project, there is a corresponding assignment for that project. To get the assignment for that project, if you come into our DevOps channel, right, let me start from here. So once you come into our DevOps channel, you'll see this icon here. If you click on this icon, you'll see the instructions for assignment 1 here. So you can click this to download it to start working on it. Something looks different here, but I'll fix it. So you guys, when you are working with the link, please try not to change anything in there. Just click the link or whatever it is to copy it, because I've noticed that the things is moving back and forth. So for example, on assignment 1 now, I know something is missing here because I know there should be a Word document, but I'll fix it. But anyway, if you come into this important link, you'll find all the important information. So there you'll find assignment 1, and you also find the instructions on how to access the Jira board. So what you will do is once you download assignment 1 and you start working on it, you will log into this Jira board, create your ticket here to start tracking your work. And once you create your ticket, you can move it to in progress once you start working on it. And when you are ready for me to review it, you move it into review. And what I'll be reviewing on your ticket is when you create your ticket and you are ready to submit it. If you click on your ticket, under your comment section, this is where you will provide whatever I'm asking you to provide to mark that your assignment has been completed. So that is how the Jira board works. Do you have questions on that?
I don't think I've got access to the board and to the other one. I've only got AWS Note, which has got, I think, 6 projects on there, but I haven't got access to these. So I don't know if it's a different process.
What was you said you have access to which one?
AWS Note, and then the top it says consultation, courses, library, about, and contact. So it's very different from the previous page that you shown.
Are you talking about the Jira board, or what are you? Which one? I'm not sure which one you're talking about. You're talking about the Slack channel?
Yes. I don't have access to this one.
You don't have access to the AWS DevOps channel?
No.
So how did you join the meeting?
Registered online, and then I started doing the projects from there.
Yeah, but how did you register? How did you access today's Zoom meeting? Because that's only where the link is.
Oh, okay.
So the link to join this meeting is in this channel. So yes.
So this gentleman you're talking to is one of them that I spoke to that came to join, but he wanted to. He said he's been trying to. He doesn't know how to join, so I sent him the link. So asking about how to join.
Okay. So if I'll check. And how do you say your name? Sorry, I don't want to mispronounce your name.
Yao.
Yao. Okay. Hi, Yao. Sorry about that. If you are not in this channel, I'll add you. Because I was under the assumption you're already in this channel because you already joined this Zoom link, this Zoom meeting, and the link is in this channel. So that's why I assumed. But I'll add you to this DevOps channel. Once you get the Slack invite, you'll be in here, right? Once you are in here, you'll be able to see all these things.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Thank you.
So once you are here, then you get the information to log in into Jira. Jira is just once you start the assignment, you create a ticket for the assignment here. It's just for me to track it and also to hold you accountable that you are completing the assignment. And it is also similar to exactly what you'll be doing at work. So once you sign up here, you create your ticket, then you can move your ticket back and forth like this by dragging it, right? It is very straightforward. Once you create one, you'll get used to it very fast. Then when you are ready for me to review your ticket, if you click on your ticket under the comment section, you can see for the comment section here, Taufik is ready for me to review his work. You can see under the comment section, he has provided the things that I'm asking for. So that's all you need to do. And for this one, this Excel tool, I will add you. This is just another way that we are using to track each assignment to make sure that it's a way for you to track each assignment as you complete them. So here, you will come here, add your name here. If your name is not here, I'll give you access to this sheet to add your name. Then when you complete an assignment, you can mark it here. I noticed you're already working with D. So if you want to be part of this group, you can add whatever our group number is here. I think she's in group 5. So you can, the group doesn't really matter, guys. The group is just an additional resource that you guys can use to rely on each other and help each other out. So feel free to join any group you want. The group is really not going to hinder you from completing your assignment.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Does anyone have any question?
Assis, can I wait, please?
Oh, yes. For those that, Brad, please message me what you need access to so I can add you. Oh, okay. So for those of you that wants me to troubleshoot with you, you can wait till class is done, then I'll troubleshoot with you. I prefer not to do it during class because when you guys are watching the playback, I don't want it to be too long because even though you guys always say you watch the video, based on my experience, when the video is like too zoomy, like I don't even know if that's a word, but if it is too much back and forth, it always mess with your experience with watching the playback. So which is why I always try not to do the troubleshooting during the class. But certainly after I can help you troubleshoot those that wants me to help them.
I have a question as a
Yes, go ahead with your question.
Okay, so when you want to create ECS and then you define what your CIDR block is from the project, I see we're using 10.0.0.0, 10.0.0. So I guess that's the network part of it. But now once I'm done and I create my containers, the IP address that comes up does not respect like I'm thinking that it should come up, the IP address should be assigned from the host part of it, but it's coming up with something like 10.0.0 and then whatever number, and then the last octet is still 0. So I was thinking like the IP address will be assigned from the last octet because that's just the host part that was lacking when we define it in there. But that's something I was just confused with. I can send you a screenshot too.
Yeah, I will have to look at it, but the thing is as long as you specify the subnet you want to create in our reference architecture, we are using the private app subnet and they are using 10.0.2. So that is the subnet we are launching our containers in. So when you specify those subnets as the designated subnet for ECS to launch your container, so your CIDR block will follow whatever CIDR block are designated for those subnets. So it will just pick something in there to use. So it would match that. It wouldn't be whatever your VPC is. It would just be whatever your subnets. It will match whatever CIDR block you specify for your subnets.
All right, that's fine. I'll send you a screenshot to follow up later. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Does anyone have any question? Continue to work on your assignment. And if you have any questions, let me know. I'll certainly try my best to get back to you on time. That is it for today's class. Thank you. Have a good weekend, guys.